Welcome to the deep dive. It feels like almost everything you read or hear about finance, it's always about getting wealthy.
Right. The strategies, the blueprint.
Exactly, how to make money. But what if the real skill, the one we don't talk about enough, is actually staying wealthy?
It's a huge distinction, isn't it?
Yeah,
And that's really what we're diving into today. Our source, it argues pretty strongly that, well, there are tons of ways to make money,
a million ways. Yep.
but maybe only one real way to keep it.
Hmm.
And that's this combination of frugality and paranoia.
Frugality and paranoia. That phrase really jumps out because, we're often told, be bold, chase growth.
Yeah.
Why that combo, frugality and paranoia, seems almost defensive.
Well, it is, in a way, but it's about long-term defense. It's about managing risk, not just on paper, but in your head over decades. Frugality, it isn't just pinching pennies.
Okay.
It's about building buffers,
Yeah.
giving yourself space so you're never backed into a corner, forced to make bad decisions when things get tough.
And the paranoia part, not like hiding under the bed.
No, not quite. It's more like active vigilance. Really understanding all the ways things can go wrong and building that into your thinking. Being prepared for surprises, not just hoping they won't happen. It's about resilience, really.
So our mission today is to dig into that. What does financial longevity actually look like? Not just a flash in the pan.
Exactly. Why survival isn't just one skill, but maybe like the ultimate financial skill.
And we're drawing on some really interesting insights from a financial psychology perspective. Lots of history, some counterintuitive stuff too.
Yeah, should be good. And to really get this idea, this difference between getting and keeping wealth, our source kicks off with this amazing historical story. Two guys,
Jesse Livermore and Abraham Germansky.
that's them, titans of their time, around the 1929 crash. They didn't know each other, but their stories, wow, they run in parallel and then just crash, literally, around that event.
Okay, let's start with Livermore. Born 1877, pro-stock trader. By his 30s, he's worth, what, like $100 million in today's money?
Yeah, a huge deal on Wall Street by 1929. Then boom, October 29. Black Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
The market just tanks, loses over a third of its value in a week.
Total chaos. His wife, Dorothy, apparently she was terrified when he got home. People were jumping out of windows, you know the stories.
She probably thought they were ruined.
But Jesse, he'd done the opposite of everyone else. Genius, luck, whatever you call it. He bet against the market, shorted it.
So when it crashed...
He made a fortune. Comes home, Dorothy's distraught, and he says something like, "Nope, darling, just had my best trading day ever. We're fabulously rich."
Wow.
Made the equivalent of over $3 billion in one day. Became one of the richest men on earth while the world was falling apart.
Incredible, just staggering. But at the same time, while Livermore's celebrating, Abraham Germansky.
Yeah, the other side of the coin, multi-millionaire real estate guy, made his money in the roaring 20s.
Like a lot of people then, he bet big on the stock market continuing to go up.
And it didn't. October 26, 1929, the New York Times reports he's just disappeared.
Disappeared.
Vanished. His lawyer basically said, yeah, he'd invested heavily in stocks.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where his story ends. Ruined.
So right there, the crash makes Livermore and breaks Germansky. A stark contrast.
Absolutely. But here's the kicker, the part that really drives the point home. Fast forward just 4 years.
Okay.
Livermore. He's riding high from that 1929 win, feeling invincible, right? Starts making bigger and bigger bets. Gets massively into debt
Oh, no.
and loses it all, everything. And tragically, he eventually took his own life.
Wow. So they both ended up.
In ruin. Different paths, different timing, but the same outcome. Our source puts it perfectly. Both were very good at getting wealthy and equally bad at staying wealthy.
That hits hard. And it's not just about billionaires, is it? This applies to, well, anyone trying to build anything financially.
Exactly. Getting money is one skill set. Keeping it, that's a whole different ballgame. Survival. That's the word our source keeps coming back to. Survival is the
A
key.
survival. It sounds so basic, but when you look at the stats...
It's brutal. Capitalism is tough.
Right.
Think about it. 40% of companies big enough to go public eventually lose pretty much all their value. Wiped out.
40%? That's huge.
Yeah. And the Forbes 400 list, the richest people, roughly 20% turnover every decade. People fall off. It shows just how hard it is to stay on top, to just survive.
And maybe that's because, like you said, the skills are different. Getting rich often involves taking big risks, right? Being optimistic, maybe a bit aggressive.
Totally. Putting yourself out there. But keeping money. Our source says it needs almost the opposite mindset.
Like what?
Humility, for one, a real fear, a healthy paranoia about losing what you've built. Frugality, definitely.
Yeah.
And crucially, accepting that some of your past success was probably luck.
So you can't just expect it to repeat forever.
Right. Past performance is no guarantee.
There's a great example of this, isn't there, from venture capital. Michael Moritz at Sequoia.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic example. Sequoia, they've backed Google, Apple, all these massive companies. Been around for decades. While most VC firms last maybe 5-10 years tops.
So Charlie Rose asked Moritz, what's the secret? Why did you guys last?
And Moritz's answer wasn't about brilliant insights or finding the next big thing. He said, I think we've always been afraid of going out of business.
Afraid. Wow.
Rose pushed him. So it's fear. Only the paranoid survive. And Moritz was like, there's a lot of truth to that. We assume tomorrow won't be like yesterday. Can't rest on our laurels. Can't be complacent.
So it wasn't about being smarter. It was about being constantly worried about messing up, about survival.
Exactly. Just sticking around, avoiding the fatal blow. That's the foundation. And it connects directly to the power of compounding.
Ah, yes, compounding.
Yeah.
The magic eighth wonder of the world, or whatever they call it. How does survival play into that?
Well, compounding needs one thing above all else. Time. Years and years for growth to really take off.
Like planting oak trees, the source says.
Yeah, perfect analogy. 1 year, not much change. 10 years, okay, something's happening. 50 years, it's incredible. But
you have to be there in 50 years.
you got it. You have to survive all the storms, the droughts, the unexpected stuff that happens along the way. If you get wiped out early, the oak tree never becomes a forest. Compounding needs uninterrupted time.
That makes sense. And when you think about someone like Warren Buffett, everyone talks about his amazing returns, how he picked stocks.
Right, trying to copy his stock picks.
But maybe the real lesson is what he didn't do.
Exactly. Think about it. He didn't load up on debt. He didn't panic sell during, 14 recessions he's lived through?
14. Wow.
He didn't ruin his reputation. He didn't marry himself to just one strategy. Didn't rely only on other people's money. Didn't burn out and quit.
He survived.
He survived. And that gave him longevity, investing from age 10 to nearly 90. That insane time span is what let compounding work its magic. Survival enabled the magic.
And there was that other guy, right, part of his early group, Rick Guerin.
Yeah, Rick Guerin. For a while, it was Buffett, Munger, and Guerin, kind of the three amigos of value investing.
So what happened to him? Buffett apparently said something telling.
He did. Someone asked Buffett years later, and he said, basically, Charlie and I always knew we'd get rich. We weren't in a hurry. Rick was just as smart, but he was in a hurry.
In a hurry? How did that play out?
Well, the 1973-74 market crash hit. Nasty one. Market down almost 70%.
Ouch.
And Rick was leveraged. He'd use margin loans, borrowed money to invest.
So when the market crashed...
Margin calls. His brokers demanded more money, or they'd sell his shares to cover the loans. He was forced to sell his Berkshire Hathaway stock back to Warren for under $40 a share.
Oh, painful. Stock that became worth millions later.
Exactly. So Guerin was just as good at getting wealthy, smart guy. But Buffett and Munger had that extra skill, staying wealthy, avoiding ruin.
Which, over the long haul, is what really matters.
It's everything. Nassim Taleb said it best. Having an edge and surviving are two different things. The first requires the second. You need to avoid ruin at all costs.
Avoid ruin at all costs.
Okay, so these stories make the why crystal clear,
Yeah.
but how do we, actually do that? How do we build this survival mindset?
The source gives us 3 principles.
Yeah, 3 practical ideas. First one, aim for financial unbreakability, more than just chasing the biggest returns.
Unbreakability. I like that word. How does that lead to bigger returns, though? Seems counterintuitive.
Because being unbreakable means you can stick around long enough for compounding to work. You don't get forced out at the worst possible time.
Okay, like the example of holding cash. That feels like the opposite of maximizing returns, especially when the market's hot.
Right. Stocks are up 10%. Your cash is earning 1%. Feels like you're losing. That 9% gap seems huge.
Yeah, it feels like you're leaving money on the table.
But shift your perspective. What if holding that low return cash stops you from panic selling your stocks when the market inevitably crashes?
Ah, I see.
Then the real return on that cash wasn't 1%. It was whatever catastrophic loss you avoided. It could be multiples higher than that 1%. Preventing one terrible mistake can be worth more than dozens of wins.
So unbreakability protects your long-term compounding.
Precisely. Compounding doesn't need huge returns every year. It just needs merely good returns sustained uninterrupted for the longest period of time, especially through the chaos. Survive the chaos.
Makes total sense. Okay, principle number 2. Plan on the plan, not going according to plan. Embrace room for error.
We all make plans, right? Financial plans, life plans, they're useful, they set direction.
But reality has other ideas.
Always. Think about the last 20 years alone.
Yeah.
Just unpredictable. 9/11, the housing crash, millions lost homes, then the financial crisis, millions lost jobs, then a huge bull market, then a pandemic.
Yeah, the unexpected is expected, weirdly enough.
Exactly. The unknown unknowns, that's just reality. So a good plan doesn't pretend everything will be smooth sailing. It builds in buffers.
That's the margin of safety idea.
Yep. Room for error. It's saying, okay, I hope the market gives me 8% a year, but my plan still works. I'll still be okay, even if it only gives me 4%.
So you're not fragile. You don't need everything to go perfectly right for your plan to succeed.
Exactly. So many bets fail, not because the core idea was wrong, but because they required pinpoint accuracy. Things had to be exactly right. Margin of safety protects you from that.
And it's not just being conservative, is it?
No, it's smarter than that. It's about increasing your odds of survival at a certain level of risk. And the cool thing is, the bigger your margin of safety, the less precise your predictions need to be. You don't need as big an edge to win.
It's like having airbags and seatbelts. You still drive, but you're better protected if things go wrong.
Perfect analogy.
Okay.
Third principle, develop a barbelled personality.
Barbelled, like weights.
Kind of, heavy on both ends. It means being optimistic about the long-term future, but simultaneously paranoid about the short-term threats that could stop you from reaching that future.
Optimism and paranoia together, that sounds like a contradiction.
It feels like it, but it's how complex systems often work. You need both. Be confident things will generally get better over time, the economy grows, innovation happens. That's the optimism.
Okay.
But also be acutely aware that the path there will be bumpy, full of setbacks, crashes, unexpected problems. That's the paranoia needed to navigate the short term.
So believe you'll reach the destination, but watch out for landmines along the way.
You got it. They aren't mutually exclusive. Think about brain development.
Okay.
By your 20s, you've actually lost about half the brain connections you had as a toddler. Half.
Pretty sad.
Sounds terrible, right? Destruction.
Yeah, sounds bad.
But you're way smarter as a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
That destruction was actually efficient pruning, getting rid of unnecessary stuff to make the remaining network stronger. Progress through loss.
Huh. Interesting. Never thought of it that way.
And the U.S. economy example is even more striking. Over 170 years, standard of living up 20-fold. Incredible progress.
Amazing long-term optimism, yeah.
But during that same period, 9 major wars, 1.3 million deaths, countless failed businesses, presidents assassinated, pandemics, natural disasters, 33 recessions, market crashes dropping by a third 12 times.
Constant reasons for short-term pessimism, even panic.
Constantly. Barely a day went by without some reason to be deeply worried. Yet the long-term trend was powerfully up.
So you need to hold both ideas. Be paranoid enough day to day to survive the setbacks.
So you can stick around long enough to benefit from the long-term optimism. It's hard, mentally. Our brains like simple black or white. Nuance is tough.
But essential for survival. And Livermore, he lost that balance.
Totally. His 1929 success made him lose the paranoia. He thought the good times would just keep rolling. Became overconfident. Swelled head, as he put it.
All right, he had that quote.
Yeah, about how no price is too high to learn not to get a swelled head. He called it an expensive disease everywhere to everybody. Learned that lesson far too late.
Financial humility, learn the hardest way possible.
The hardest way.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. This deep dive, it's really shifted the focus, hasn't it? From just getting wealthy to the often ignored art of staying wealthy. Survival is the name of the game.
Absolutely. It underpins everything else.
And those 3 principles seem key. Aim for unbreakability, not just big returns. Plan for things to go wrong. Build in that margin of safety.
Right. Embrace room for error.
And cultivate that barbelled mindset, long-term optimism balanced with short-term paranoia.
It's a powerful framework.
So here's a final thought to chew on. We talked about brain development, the U.S. economy, how massive long-term growth often involves, even requires, short-term destruction, loss, chaos, growth amid loss.
Yeah, that pruning, those setbacks.
What if that applies to you, personally, to your career, your projects, your own growth? What if the setbacks, the times you feel you've lost, the moments demanding that paranoia, what if they aren't just roadblocks? What if they're actually part of the process? Maybe even an essential, efficient part of clearing the way for your next big leap forward? What destruction in your life might actually be paving the way for something extraordinary?